4 years ago, the most dangerous man in Chicago looked her in the eyes across a hospital corridor and told her she was a distraction he couldn't afford, that she was soft, that the world he lived in would swallow someone like her whole, and he would not watch that happen, and he would not be the reason it did. She had believed him because she was 28 and exhausted, and because the way he said it had sounded almost like protection. She had walked out of that hospital, driven to her apartment, packed what fit in 2 suitcases, and never gone back. She had built something from the rubble of that night, a small practice in Ashford, Oregon, a town close enough to Portland that she could get supplies without a 2-hour drive, but far enough away that no one from her old life would have any reason to pass through it. A rented house with a fenced yard and a lemon tree that produced exactly 9 lemons per year, regardless of what she did to encourage it. A daughter who had her mother's dark eyes and her father's particular way of going still when she was thinking hard about something, a stillness that Margaux had learned to read like weather. She had not told him about the daughter. She had told herself this was survival and had mostly believed it. Her name, the one she used in Ashford, was the one she'd always had. Margaux Voss. She had not changed it because she was a doctor, and her license was her livelihood, and there were limits to how thoroughly a person could disappear without giving up everything that made the disappearing survivable. She had moved. She had changed her number. She had not looked him up, not once, in 4 years, because she knew herself well enough to know that looking would crack something open that she did not have the space or the luxury to let crack. Her daughter's name was Iris. She was 3 years old, and she had recently become deeply invested in the correct categorization of rocks, which she collected from the yard and the parking lot of the practice and the sidewalk outside the grocery store, and arranged on the windowsill above the kitchen sink in an order that made sense to her and no one else. She could identify a piece of quartz by touch. Margaux had tested this in the dark once, more out of curiosity than any real expectation, and Iris had held the stone in her small palm for 4 seconds and said, "Quiet and certain, white one. Kitchen window, 3rd from the left." She had been correct. This is the kind of thing that happened when you raised a child alone. You learned them completely. Every register of their voice, every particular silence, every way their face moved before the feeling arrived. You became, out of necessity, fluent in a language that had only one speaker, and you were the only one who had taken the time to learn it. The morning of the day everything changed started the way mornings in Ashford usually did in March. Damp and gray and smelling of pine and the particular cold that came off the coast range when the wind shifted east. Margaux had gotten Iris dressed and fed and had remembered at the last possible moment that it was the day of the spring book fair at the Daycare, which meant she needed cash, which meant the ATM on Hendricks Street, which meant they would be 3 minutes late to drop off, which meant Margaux would be 3 minutes late to the practice, which meant her first appointment, a patient she genuinely liked, would be left in the waiting room with only the stack of outdated magazines and the small fish tank that needed cleaning. She told herself it was fine. She was telling herself this as she pushed through the door of the daycare with Iris on her hip and the cash in an envelope in her coat pocket and her stethoscope around her neck because she had forgotten to put it in her bag when she heard it. Not his voice. She heard her daughter go quiet. Iris was not a quiet child. She narrated constantly, a running commentary on the world around her, delivered at the confident volume of someone who had not yet learned that not everyone wanted to hear everything she noticed. When Iris went quiet, something had caught her entire attention. Margaux looked up. He was standing near the front window of the daycare lobby. He was not looking at her. He was looking at Iris with an expression she had never seen on his face before, and she had once watched him sit perfectly still while a man with a gun told him to empty his pockets in the parking garage of the Langmore Hotel, and he had been calmer about that than this. His name was Roman Hale. He was 36 years old, and he ran the largest private security and intelligence firm on the West Coast, and he had told her she was a distraction he couldn't afford. He was looking at his daughter's face the way a man looked at something he had not prepared himself to survive. The rain kept falling outside. Someone's phone buzzed at the front desk. A toddler in the corner dropped a block and announced this to the room. Margaux's heart did not slow down. It did not do the cinematic thing where time stretched out and offered her room to think. It kept beating at exactly the wrong speed, fast and uneven, and she was aware of Iris's weight on her hip and the envelope of cash in her pocket and the fish tank that needed cleaning and the fact that she had no plan for this, had never made a plan for this, had spent 4 years not making a plan for this because making one would have meant admitting it could happen. Roman looked up. His eyes found hers, and she watched him absorb the information. Not just that she was here, not just that she had a child, the particular dark stillness of Iris's eyes, looking back at him from her mother's arms. "Margaux," he said. His voice was the same, low and even, the kind of voice that did not change register for most things. It had changed register now, slightly, almost imperceptibly. She would have missed it if she hadn't spent 2 years learning how to read him. "I have to take her to her class," Margaux said. Her own voice was steady. She was a doctor. She had learned steady. "Don't go anywhere." She walked Iris down the hall to the Sparrow Room, which was what the daycare called the 3-year-old classroom, because the woman who ran it believed children needed language that matched their stage of flight. She crouched in the doorway and helped Iris with her coat and did not look at her own hands to see if they were shaking. "Mama." Iris touched her face with one small hand, the way she sometimes did when she was checking in, taking a reading. "You look weird. I'm okay. You look like when you spilled the coffee. Thank you for that. Go find your cubby." Iris went. She paused once at the edge of the room and turned back, and for a moment Margaux saw it again. That stillness, that particular way of stopping completely to assess before proceeding, and she had to look away. Roman was still in the lobby when she came back. He had not sat down. He was standing near the fish tank, looking at it, and he turned when he heard her footsteps. She stopped 6 feet away from him because 6 feet felt like a number she could manage. "How long?" he asked. 4 years. She's 3. She kept her voice flat. Not cruel. Flat. "Her name is Iris." He looked at her for a long time. She watched him do what she had watched him do in high-pressure rooms, with high-stakes people who were trying to make him react in ways he hadn't chosen. He was containing it. She could see the effort of it, which was something she had rarely seen from him before. "I didn't know you were pregnant," he said. "You told me to leave. I know what I told you. I found out 5 weeks later. I was in Portland. I had already taken the job here." She paused. "I thought about calling. I want you to know I thought about it. But you didn't. No." The silence between them was not empty. It had weight and shape and a long history she did not have time to stand inside of right now. She had a patient at 8:15 and a fish tank that needed cleaning, and a daughter she had raised alone for 3 years, and she was standing in a daycare lobby in Ashford, Oregon, telling Roman Hale he had a child. "I'm not here because I found you," he said. "I want you to know that. I didn't know you were here. What are you here for?" "Langford Mercer." He said the name like he knew she would recognize it. She did. A client, she remembered. One of the complicated ones, the kind of case that Roman's firm specialized in, the intersection of private security and things that didn't survive public scrutiny. He has property in the area. I was doing an on-site evaluation. And you walked into the wrong daycare. I walked into the only daycare on this block because there was a child's jacket on the sidewalk outside, and the wind was picking up. He paused. It had a name tag, Iris Voss. She closed her eyes for 2 seconds. Just 2. "I need to get to work," she said. "I have a patient. I know, I'm not going to stop you." He looked at the hallway she had walked down toward the Sparrow Room. "Can I?" He stopped. Started again. "I'd like to see her." The thing was, she had spent 4 years being angry about many things, but not about this specific thing, because this specific thing required her to have made a different choice, and she hadn't. She had made the choice she made, and she had built a life around it, and it had been a good life, a genuinely good life, and now he was standing in the lobby asking to see his daughter, and she had no righteous position to stand on because she was the one who had not called. "Not today," she said. "Give me your number. I'll call you." He looked at her steadily. She expected him to push. He didn't. He took a business card from his coat pocket. Of course he had business cards. He had probably had business cards at 22 and held it out to her. She took it without touching his hand. She went to work. She didn't call that day. She drove to the practice and saw her 8:15 patient and her 10 o'clock and the walk-in at 11:30, who turned out to have a sinus infection that had been quietly escalating for 6 days and needed immediate antibiotics. And she wrote prescriptions and reviewed labs and ate half a granola bar over the sink in the break room at 2 in the afternoon and told herself she was fine. Her nurse, a woman named Dot, who was 61 years old and had been working in general practice for 37 years and had strong opinions about most things, looked at her at 3 o'clock and said, "You look terrible." "Sinus infection," Margaux said. "It's going around." Dot did not look convinced. Dot had never looked convinced by anything Margaux said that wasn't about medicine. She picked up Iris at 5:15. Iris came out of the sparrow room, carrying a rock she had found in the sensory table, and a drawing she had made of what she said was a horse but which Margaux recognized, with a small private pain, as a person standing very far away from other people. In the car, Iris was quiet. "What are you thinking about?" Margaux asked. "The man." Margaux's hands did not move on the wheel. "What man?" "The one in the lobby." Iris looked out the window. She had Roman's profile when she turned her head like that, the straight line of the nose, the particular angle of the jaw. Margaux had learned not to look at it directly. "He looked at me a lot. People look at children. He looked at me like you look at my rocks." Iris said this with the simple certainty of someone stating a known fact, like he was trying to remember them. Margaux did not say anything. She drove the rest of the way home in a silence that Iris, with her 3-year-old's perfect instincts, chose not to fill. She called him the next morning. He answered on the second ring, which told her he had been waiting. "How long are you in the area?" she asked. "As long as I need to be. That's not an answer." "I don't have a return flight," he said. "I can get one or not get one. That's your call more than mine." She looked at the lemon tree through the kitchen window. 9 lemons this year, same as every year, regardless of what she did. "I need you to understand something before we do anything else," she said. "Iris doesn't know who you are. She knows she has a dad. I've never lied to her about that. I've just said he didn't know about her, and we live here, and our life is good. She's accepted that because she's 3 and she trusts me. Okay, I need time to do this right. I'm not going to introduce you to my daughter as a stranger who happened to be in her daycare. I need to prepare her. How much time?" "A week, maybe 2. There was a pause. She expected him to fight this. He didn't fight it. "All right," he said. "And Roman." She stopped. She had not said his name out loud in 4 years, and it sat strangely in her mouth, familiar and foreign at once. "If you disappear again, for any reason, before or after she meets you, I need you to tell me now. Because I will not let her be someone you walk away from. I'd rather she never know you at all." The silence lasted 4 seconds, she counted. "I'm not going to disappear," he said. "I told you to leave because I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. I've been wrong about that for 4 years, and I know it. Knowing it and doing something different aren't the same thing." "No," he said. "They're not. But I'm here." The 2 weeks that followed were not simple. She told Iris on a Saturday morning, over oatmeal, in the careful way she had rehearsed 3 times the night before and then thrown out because children didn't respond to rehearsed. Iris listened with her particular listening face, the one that meant she was running the information through that quiet interior machinery, the one that looked so much like Roman's focus that it made Margaux's chest hurt. "Is he nice?" Iris asked. "I think so. I think he's trying to be... Does he know about rocks? I don't know. You could tell him." Iris considered this. She picked up her spoon. "Okay," she said, and went back to her oatmeal with the practical completeness of a person who had decided. They met at the park on Hendrick Street the following Sunday. Roman arrived 7 minutes early, which she only knew because she had driven past once before parking, and she had seen him standing at the entrance with his hands in his coat pockets, looking at a sparrow on the fence post, with the focused attention he gave to things he was trying not to appear to be thinking about. Iris held Margaux's hand all the way from the car to the gate. At the gate, she stopped. Roman crouched down to her level without being told to, without any of the awkward performance that adults sometimes did when they met children, the exaggerated expressions, and the too loud voices that always made Iris take a step back. He just crouched down and looked at her the same way he looked at everything, directly, quietly. "You have a lot of rocks," he said. He was looking at the one she'd put in her coat pocket, the corners of which were bulging. Iris looked at her pocket, then at him. "I always bring some. In case. In case what? In case there are new ones somewhere." She reached into her pocket and produced a piece of pale green sea glass, smooth and cloudy. "I found this one at the beach in November. Mama says it used to be a bottle." Roman looked at it. "Green's the most common," he said, "but it doesn't make it less good." Iris stared at him. Margaux watched her daughter run some internal calculation. "How do you know that?" "My grandmother lived near the water," he said. "She collected them. She had a jar of green ones on the windowsill, and she said they were the common soldiers of the sea glass world." He paused. She'd been looking for a blue one her whole life and never found one. Iris was very still. "Blue is the rarest," she said. "I know that. Mama told me it is. I'm going to find one," Iris said. "Not a wish, a statement." "Yeah," Roman said. "I believe you." Margaux stood 2 steps behind her daughter and watched this happen and did not cry because she was a doctor and she had learned not to cry at things in public, and because she had told herself she would not let herself feel this yet. There would be time to feel it. Later, when Iris was asleep and the house was quiet and she had her tea and the 9 lemons were still on the tree and the feeling would not break anything that mattered. She gave herself that permission. Later. The complication, when it came from somewhere she had not thought to guard against. His name was Derek Hale, Roman's younger brother, and she had met him twice in the 2 years she and Roman had been together. Had registered him as charming in the particular exhausting way of men who had grown up watching power and had decided the quickest path to it was through being liked. She had not trusted him then. She had mostly forgotten him in the 4 years since. He came to the practice on a Wednesday afternoon in early April, and the receptionist sent him back because he said he was a friend, and she looked up from a patient chart to find him in the doorway of her office. "I heard you were here," he said. She closed the chart. "Who told you?" Roman mentioned it, in passing. He sat down across from her desk without being asked, the way he did everything, slightly ahead of where the invitation would have been. "I wanted to see how you were doing. I'm fine. I have another patient in 10 minutes. I'll be quick." He smiled at her. It was a good smile. That was the problem with Derek, had always been the problem with Derek. "I want to talk about the kid." She looked at him steadily. "Her name is Iris." "Right. Iris." He leaned forward. "Here's the thing, Margaux. Roman is good at his work. He is genuinely the best at it. But his work is also the reason you left, isn't it? The reason you had to leave." He said had to like he was doing her a favor, acknowledging the necessity of it. "The firm has enemies. Roman has enemies. If he's here, in your town, around your daughter, that's a risk you're taking on. Thank you for your concern. I'm serious. I know you are." She looked at him. "I also know that this conversation is happening 3 weeks after Roman found us, and you didn't reach out to me in 4 years before that, so I'm going to think about what that means." She stood up. "I have a patient." He stood too. At the door, he turned. "I know something Roman hasn't told you," he said, "about why he really asked you to leave. If you want to know, I'll tell you." She held the door open. "If Roman wants me to know something," she said, "Roman can tell me. Goodbye, Derek." She called Roman that evening. She told him about the visit. There was a silence on his end, the kind that had specific weight. Then he said, "I'll handle it. I don't need you to handle it. I need you to tell me what he was talking about. The real reason you asked me to leave." Another silence, longer this time. "I found out someone in my firm was leaking information to a group that was specifically looking for pressure points, vulnerabilities." He stopped, started again. "You were a vulnerability. I thought if you were out of my life, visibly, completely out of it, you'd be safer. I told you it was because you were a distraction, because I didn't want you to know you were a target." She sat with this for a moment. "And was I? A target? Yes. For about 8 months. Then the situation resolved, she said. And Derek knew about this. He was part of the firm at the time. Yes, and he's here now, in my town, telling me that your presence in my life is a risk. The silence that followed was brief but complete. Yes, Roman said. I understand what that looks like. Do you understand why I need to know if any of that risk still exists? Because I am not a variable in your firm's security calculus. I'm a mother. And Iris is 3. There's no active threat, he said. I would not have stayed if there was. You need to be sure of that. I am sure of that. And Derek is not a threat to you. He stopped. She heard him choose words carefully, the way he did when he was trying to be precise rather than diplomatic. He has his own interests. He's always had his own interests. I know what those are and I manage them. That's not the same as reassuring me. No, he said, you're right, it's not. Another pause. I'm going to tell you something I haven't told you yet, and I want you to hear it as information, not as me trying to resolve this faster than it needs to resolve. He breathed out. I've thought about you every day for 4 years. I'm not saying that to move you. I'm saying it because you deserve to know it, and I've been too careful about what I say to you, and that carefulness hasn't served either of us. She looked at the lemon tree. The kitchen light fell across it, yellow and ordinary. I know, she said, quietly. I know you have. She didn't say the rest. Not yet. But she let it sit between them on the line, not quite spoken, close enough to hear. The thing about Derek resolved itself, which was not a clean resolution. Roman had a conversation with him that she was not present for and did not ask to be present for, and Derek left Ashford, and Roman came over that evening and told her what had been said in the tone he used when he was reporting facts rather than feelings. He wanted a role in Iris's life, Roman said. They were standing in the kitchen, and Iris was asleep, and the house was the particular quiet of a house with a sleeping child in it, which was a different quiet than any other. He felt that if he could establish a relationship with her before I did, he'd have leverage. Leverage for what? Positioning within the firm. He wants a larger stake. He thought a family connection would give him something to use. Roman's expression did not change. He was wrong. She absorbed this. What did you tell him? That his stake in the firm was already settled, and no personal relationship with my daughter would alter it, and that if he attempted to contact you again without your explicit invitation, the settled stake would be reviewed. You said my daughter. He looked at her. You said my daughter, she repeated. Not the child, not Iris. You said my daughter. Yes, he said simply. She looked at her hands on the kitchen counter. The lemon tree was a dark shape outside the window. She's going to need time, Margaux said. She's only 3. She's adaptable, but she's also mine, and I'm not going to rush what she needs. I know, and I need time too. What we were 4 years ago isn't what we are now. I don't know what we are now. Neither do I, he said. I'm not trying to skip ahead to an answer. I'm trying to be here for whatever the question is. She nodded. She looked out at the lemon tree. 9 lemons, she said. What? Every year. That tree produces exactly 9 lemons. I've done everything. I've read about it. I've asked the nursery. 9 lemons every year. She paused. I used to think it was a metaphor, that some things just give you exactly what they're going to give you and no more. Roman looked at the tree. Maybe it's not that the tree is limited, he said. Maybe 9 is what it's decided to offer, and it's waiting to see if that's enough. She looked at him. She did not say anything, but she let the silence be the kind that meant something. The months that followed were not simple, and she would not have wished them to be. Roman took an office in Portland, 40 minutes north, which was close enough and far enough in the way that things needed to be during that particular season of learning each other again. He drove down on weekends, and sometimes on Thursday evenings, and Iris developed a specific greeting for him that involved first showing him whatever rock was currently most important, and then demanding he confirm its classification before any other conversation could begin. He learned to identify quartz on sight. He learned that the pink ones were likely feldspar, and the heavy dark ones were often basalt, and that Iris considered this knowledge the basic minimum for a functioning adult. He was a diligent student. Iris accepted this with the gravity of someone whose standards had been met. Margaux watched it happen the way she watched difficult things, with attention, with care, with the part of herself that had learned to be both present and slightly apart. reading the signs. She watched her daughter extend trust in small, careful increments, the way Iris did with everything that mattered to her. A rock offered, a question asked, an answer received and evaluated. The process repeated until enough data existed to make a judgment. She was 3. She was doing exactly what Margaux did. The recognition of this was both funny and quietly devastating. There were hard conversations. Roman had them the way he had everything, directly and without decoration, and she sat across from him at her kitchen table, and they went through the years that had been lost the way you went through a long reckoning, not to assign blame but to understand what had actually happened. She had not told him about the pregnancy. He had not told her she was in danger. They had both protected the other in ways that had cost them enormously and had not been asked for. "If you had told me," he said once, "I would have come." "I know," she said. "That's part of why I didn't." He looked at her. "I didn't want to come back because you had to," she said. "I wanted something different than that. I wanted to be chosen because I was worth choosing, not because I came with a consequence." She looked at her hands. It was probably the wrong reasoning. I know it was wrong, but it was what I had. He was quiet for a while. "Then you were worth choosing. You were worth choosing before Iris existed. That's something I failed to demonstrate, and I know it." She didn't argue with him. She also didn't tell him it was fine. It wasn't fine. It was the truth, and the truth was the thing they were building the next part of everything on, and it needed to be solid. Iris found the blue sea glass in October. They had driven to the coast for the weekend, the 3 of them, staying in a small rental in a town called Crestwick, where the beach was rocky and the water was the particular green-gray of the Pacific in autumn. Roman and Iris had gotten up before Margaux, and she had heard them from the bedroom. Iris's specific patter moving through the small house, Roman's lower voice in response, the sound of the door opening. She lay there and listened to the silence that followed, and the distant sound of the ocean, and let herself be still. When she got up and made coffee and went down to the beach, they were crouched together near the tide line. Iris with her whole body forward, coat getting wet at the knees from the wet sand, Roman just behind her, his hand steady at her back so she didn't overbalance. Margaux stood at the top of the beach and watched. Iris found something. She could tell by the way her daughter's whole posture changed, that particular electric stillness, before the sound came. Dad, not loud, not shrieking, just certain, the way Iris said things that mattered. "Dad, look." Roman looked. He had been in rooms with men twice his size who wanted to hurt him, and he had stayed still for that. He had not stayed still for this. She saw it even from the distance. Something in the line of his shoulders, some quality of the breath he took. She did not cry. She was a doctor. She had a coffee in her hand, and the ocean was cold and loud and indifferent around her, and she did not cry. She walked down the beach to where her daughter was holding up a piece of sea glass, worn smooth by years of salt and stone, its edges dissolved into something almost soft, blue. Not the pale-washed blue of a bottle that had spent 5 years in the water. Deep blue, the color of water when the light got into it at the right angle. "Blue," Iris announced. "Dad, I told you. I said I'd find one." "You did," Roman said. His voice had a quality she had only heard from him a few times. She had learned to recognize it. "You were right." Iris held it up to the gray sky. The light moved through it. "Can we keep it?" "Yes," Margaux said. "We keep it." Iris closed her fingers around it and turned to look at her parents, both of them, with the satisfied expression of someone whose patience had been vindicated by the exact outcome she had always expected. The ocean kept its rhythm. The wind was cold and honest and had no interest in being poetic about it. And on the wet sand, with a piece of rare blue glass in a small hand and the gray Pacific enormous and indifferent behind them, the story settled into something that did not need to be explained or finished or made clean. It just needed to be lived, day by day, in the town with the lemon tree that gave exactly what it gave, and the house with the rocks on the windowsill, and the practice with the fish tank that needed cleaning, and the 3 people who had found their way to the same piece of coastline through every kind of damage a life could make.